She entered the wrong farm, but met the millionaire farmer who changed her destiny. A woman takes a wrong turn and stumbles onto a sprawling ranch belonging to a man with a dark past. What begins as a simple mistake becomes a journey that will transform both their lives forever. Sometimes the paths we didn't choose lead us exactly where we need to be. Before we dive in, let me know in the comments what part of the world you're watching from, and become part of this special moment with us. The August sun beat down mercilessly on Rebecca's face as she walked along the dusty road winding through golden fields. She hadn't been back to her parents' a house in the countryside for nearly 4 years, always too busy with her veterinary studies in Boston. Now, finally on summer break, she'd decided to explore the surroundings she'd known as a child. But after an hour of walking, nothing looked familiar anymore. The road had split several times, and she'd always chosen the path that seemed most interesting. Now, with the sun beginning its descent, she admitted to herself that she was completely lost. Ahead of her, a massive wooden gate marked the entrance to a property. With no other options, Rebecca opened it and followed the internal road, hoping to find someone who could give her directions. The ranch was breathtaking. Well-maintained pastures stretched as far as the eye could see, dotted with workers, houses, and modern corrals. Rebecca had never seen such a large and organized property. The sound of approaching hooves made her turn around. A man mounted on a chestnut horse was riding toward her, sitting with the upright posture of someone born in a saddle. Even from a distance, Rebecca could see he was tall and wore a hat that shadowed his face. The rider stopped a few yards away, and Rebecca could finally see his features. He must have been around 37, with a strong jawline and dark eyes that studied her with disturbing intensity. There was something about his bearing that radiated natural authority. "You lost?" The voice was deep, with a tone that sounded more like an accusation than a question. "I am," Rebecca replied, lifting her chin. She didn't like the way he was looking at her, as if she were a dangerous intruder. "Could you point me toward town?" The man dismounted with a fluid movement, holding the reins as he approached. He was even more imposing standing up, and Rebecca had to tilt her head back to face him. "You know you're on private property?" he asked, crossing his arms. "You could have given warning you were coming in." "I didn't see anyone to warn," Rebecca retorted, feeling her blood boil. "And I'm not stealing anything. I just need information." The corner of the man's mouth curved into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You've got courage, at least. Where are you from?" "Boston. I'm spending the summer at my parents' house." "Tourist," he murmured, as if that explained everything. "Who are your parents?" "Robert and Linda Mitchell." The man nodded slowly. "I know them. Robert works at the bank." "That's right." Rebecca felt slightly relieved. Perhaps he wasn't as hostile as he seemed. "You're far from home," he said, mounting his horse again. "Follow me. I'll take you to the main road." For the next 20 minutes, they walked in silence, him mounted, her on foot. Rebecca took the opportunity to observe more of the ranch and was impressed by its size and organization. There was something majestic about this place. "It's a beautiful ranch," she commented, breaking the silence. "It's been my home for over 12 years, he responded without taking his eyes off the road. "So you've worked here a long time?" He looked at her with a strange expression. "You could say that." When they reached the main road, he pointed right. "Follow that way. In 15 minutes, you'll reach town." "Thank you," Rebecca said, genuinely grateful despite his initial rudeness. "Try not to get lost again," was his response before galloping back to the ranch. Rebecca watched him ride away, intrigued. There was something about that man that both bothered and fascinated her. 3 days later, Rebecca was bored. Her parents' house, as welcoming as it was, didn't offer much entertainment for someone accustomed to the pace of Boston. That's when she remembered her conversation with Mrs. Peterson, her parents' neighbor. "There are some sick horses at Daniel Harrison's ranch," the lady had mentioned during lunch. "Nobody knows exactly what's wrong, but they say they're not eating properly." Daniel Harrison. Rebecca knew the name. Everyone in the region knew it. He was the richest and most influential rancher in the area, owner of thousands of acres and hundreds of head of cattle. He also had a reputation for being arrogant and difficult to deal with. As a veterinary student, Rebecca offered to take a look at the animals. Mrs. Peterson laughed in her face. "Girl, Daniel Harrison won't want help from a student. He's got his own veterinarian." But Rebecca was stubborn. The next morning, she grabbed her backpack with the basic instruments she always carried and headed to the ranch she'd discovered by accident. This time, she walked straight through the main gate and headed toward the corrals she'd spotted on her previous visit. There were several horses in a nearby pasture, and some really did look listless. Rebecca was examining one of the animals over the fence when she heard the familiar voice. "You again." She turned and found the same man from last time, now without his hat, revealing brown hair with some gray strands at the temples. In daylight, she could see he was more handsome than she'd initially noticed. "I heard you've got some sick horses," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm a veterinary student. Thought I might help." He crossed his arms and studied her with that intense gaze. "And what makes you think I need your help?" "Nothing," Rebecca admitted. "But it doesn't hurt to take a look, does it? If I can't help, you lose nothing." For a long moment, they stared at each other. Finally, he sighed. "5 minutes," he said, opening the pasture gate. "But if any animal gets hurt because of you, you'll have problems." Rebecca walked through the gate, feeling her heart race. She wasn't sure if it was from being close to the horses or the intimidating presence of the man. The horses were magnificent, but 3 of them really showed worrying symptoms: loss of appetite, sluggish movements, and a hunched posture indicating abdominal discomfort. "How long have they been like this?" she asked, carefully approaching one of the animals. "About a week." Rebecca examined the horses carefully, checking their gums, listening to their hearts, and observing their droppings. After a few minutes, she had a suspicion. "I think it's colic from worms," she said. "When was the last deworming?" The man frowned. "My vet was here 2 months ago, said everything was fine. Worms can be tricky. Sometimes symptoms only appear when the infestation is already advanced." Rebecca pointed to one of the horse's droppings. "See how dry it is, and the hunched posture indicates abdominal pain." She took a small vial from her backpack. "I can do a quick test on the feces to confirm." The man watched her work, with an expression mixing skepticism and curiosity. Rebecca prepared a small sample and examined it with a portable magnifier. "Here," she said, offering the magnifier to him. "You can see the worm eggs." He leaned in to look, getting close enough for Rebecca to smell his masculine scent mixed with leather and field. For a moment, she lost her concentration. "Really?" he murmured, straightening up. "And what do you suggest?" "Specific dewormer for this type of worm and a diet change for a few days, lighter feed and more water." Rebecca put away her instruments. "I can write the specifications for you." For the first time, the man smiled, a genuine smile that completely transformed his face. "I think I underestimated you," he said. "What's your name?" "Rebecca Mitchell." "Thank you, Rebecca Mitchell." He extended his hand. "You can call me Daniel." Rebecca felt an electric shock when their hands touched. "Daniel. Could you be Daniel Harrison?" she asked, feeling her face flush. "The same?" His smile widened, seeing her expression. "Surprised?" Rebecca quickly withdrew her hand. "I'm sorry. I didn't know you were the owner of the ranch." Daniel seemed amused. "I thought it was obvious." "You said you worked here." I do. Just didn't mention I was the boss. Rebecca felt simultaneously embarrassed and irritated. Why didn't you tell me? Wanted to see how you'd treat me without knowing who I was. His eyes gleamed with something that might be admiration. I liked it. Most people act different when they know I'm Daniel Harrison. And how do they act? Gold-digging or scared? Rebecca lifted her chin. Well, I'm neither one thing nor the other. That's what I noticed. Daniel put his hands in his pockets. That's why I'm going to accept your help. When can you come back to check the horses? Tomorrow, if you want. Perfect. Come in the morning. He paused. And Rebecca? Yes? Thank you. It's been a while since anyone surprised me like this. As she walked back home, Rebecca couldn't get Daniel out of her head. There was more to him than his reputation suggested, and that intrigued her deeply. Rebecca returned the next morning as agreed, but this time she was received by a worker at the main gate. The boss said to tell you he's at the horse corral, the man informed her respectfully. As she walked through the ranch in daylight, Rebecca was even more impressed by its grandeur. There were buildings everywhere, stables, warehouses, workers' houses, and in the distance, on top of a hill, a large house that must be the main residence. Daniel was waiting for her at the corral, talking with an older man who introduced himself as Thomas, the foreman. How are the horses? Rebecca asked after the greetings. Better, Daniel replied. Got the dewormer you recommended? Thomas already applied it last night. Rebecca examined the animals again and was satisfied with what she saw. They seemed more alert and had eaten a bit more. In a few days they'll be completely recovered, she said. But it's important to do regular deworming to prevent this from happening again. My vet didn't catch this, Daniel commented, frowning. Sometimes it happens. Worm symptoms can be subtle at first. Daniel looked at her, but Rebecca noticed he wasn't completely convinced. There was something else bothering him. Want to take a walk around the ranch? He asked suddenly. Since you're here, Rebecca hesitated. She had no other commitments and admitted to herself that she was curious to see more. All right. They walked through the pastures, Daniel explaining about the different types of cattle and the management techniques they used. Rebecca was impressed with his knowledge and passion for the work, very different from the image of an arrogant rancher she'd had of him. It was when they reached a more remote pasture that Rebecca saw something that made her stop suddenly. But that horse is limping, she said, pointing to an animal grazing alone in a corner. Daniel followed her gaze and sighed. That's Thunderbolt. He's been like that for a few days. Why is he separated from the others? So he doesn't make the injury worse. Rebecca approached the fence, watching the animal carefully. The horse was beautiful, pure black with a white star on his forehead, but clearly in pain. Can I examine him? Daniel hesitated. He doesn't like strangers. He's been more aggressive since he got hurt. Let me try. Against his better judgment, Daniel opened the gate. Rebecca entered slowly, speaking softly to the horse, letting him get used to her presence before approaching. Thunderbolt watched her with distrust, but didn't back away when she extended her hand. Rebecca managed to touch his neck and gradually examine his left hind leg. There's something stuck in the hoof, she said to Daniel. A stone or piece of metal. My vet said it was just a sprain. Rebecca continued the examination, and her heart sank at what she found. Daniel, this isn't recent. This injury has been like this for weeks. Daniel's face hardened. What do you mean? The inflammation is very advanced. If it had been treated right away, Rebecca shook her head. We're going to need antibiotics, anti-inflammatories, and a lot of care so it doesn't turn into a serious infection. Daniel entered the pasture, his face closed with anger. Dr. Stevens told me it was just rest. I'm sorry, but he was wrong. For a long moment, Daniel stood in silence, stroking the horse's neck. Rebecca could see the internal struggle in his expression. "Thunderbolt was the first horse I bought when I acquired this ranch," he finally said. "He means a lot to me." "It's not too late," Rebecca said gently, "but he needs proper treatment." Daniel stared at her intensely. "Can you treat him?" "I can guide the treatment, but I'm a student. You understand more than the vet I've been paying for 5 years." His voice had a hardness Rebecca hadn't heard before. "Will you treat Thunderbolt?" Rebecca felt the weight of responsibility. "I'll need some medications that only a vet can prescribe. I'll arrange it. And he'll need daily care for at least 2 weeks. Can you come every day?" Rebecca hesitated. Staying 15 days coming to the ranch meant spending a lot of time with Daniel, and she could already feel he affected her in a way she couldn't explain. "I can," she finally said. The smile Daniel gave her made her heart race. "Thank you, Rebecca. I won't forget this." As they walked back to the ranch headquarters, Rebecca couldn't ignore the feeling that she was getting into something much bigger than treating a horse. In the following days, Rebecca established a routine. She arrived at the ranch every morning around 8 o'clock. She treated Thunderbolt, checked the other horses, and generally stayed until noon. Daniel was always present, and gradually Rebecca discovered more about him. Contrary to his reputation as a difficult man, he proved to be attentive and genuinely concerned about the animals' welfare. "Did you grow up here?" Rebecca asked one morning while applying ointment to Thunderbolt's hoof. "No, I bought this ranch 12 years ago." Daniel was leaning on the fence, watching her work. "I used to live in New York. What did you do there? Business? Companies? Investments?" His voice had a distant tone. "Office life. And you left it all to be a rancher." Daniel took a while to respond. "Let's just say I needed a radical change." Rebecca sensed there was a story behind those words, but didn't insist. She was learning that Daniel was a man of few words about his past. Thunderbolt was visibly improving. The inflammation had decreased, and he was already putting weight on his hoof more firmly. Rebecca felt proud of the progress. "You have a way with animals?" Daniel commented, watching how the horse remained calm during treatment. "I always have. Being a vet has been my dream since I was a child. Why did you choose to study in Boston instead of staying here in the region?" "There's no veterinary program here, and I wanted to get out, see the world." Rebecca paused. "My parents didn't really understand. And now, will you come back here after you graduate?" The question caught Rebecca off guard. "I don't know yet. Depends on the opportunities that come up." Daniel didn't say more, but Rebecca felt he was analyzing her answer. That afternoon, when she was already preparing to leave, Daniel surprised her with an invitation. "Want to see the rest of the ranch? There are some new calves that arrived last week." Rebecca hesitated only a second before accepting. They walked to a pasture where about 20 calves were grazing peacefully. "They're beautiful," she commented, admiring the animals. "First-quality cattle, investment for the future." Daniel leaned his arms on the fence. "This ranch is my life, Rebecca. Everything I've built is here." There was an intensity in his voice that made Rebecca look at him more closely. "Don't you ever feel lonely here?" The question came out before she could stop herself. Daniel stared at her with an unreadable expression. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but that's the price you pay for certain choices." "What kind of choices?" Daniel was silent for so long that Rebecca thought he wouldn't answer. "Choices that hurt people we love," he finally said. Before Rebecca could fully process what he'd said, Daniel straightened up. "It's getting late. I'll walk you to the main road." During the journey, they walked in silence, but Rebecca felt a tension in the air she couldn't explain. There was something about Daniel that attracted and scared her at the same time. "Rebecca," he said when they reached the road, Thank you for everything you're doing for Thunderbolt. It's my job. No, it isn't. His eyes met hers. You're doing this out of kindness. There's a difference. Rebecca felt her heart race with the intensity of his gaze. For a moment, it seemed he was going to say something more, but he just waved and returned to the ranch. That night, Rebecca had trouble sleeping, thinking about Daniel's words and the way he'd looked at her. It was the 10th day of treatment when everything changed. Rebecca arrived at the ranch on a cloudy morning, sensing the weather would close in. Thunderbolt was much better, practically healed, but she wanted to do one last check before discharging him. Daniel wasn't at the corral as usual. Thomas, the foreman, explained that he'd left early to check a problem in the north pasture. "Can you go alone today?" Thomas asked. "He should be back soon." Rebecca confirmed, and headed to the corral. Thunderbolt greeted her with a low whinny, almost as if he recognized her. She smiled, satisfied with the animal's recovery. She was finishing the examination when she heard a strange noise coming from the adjacent pasture. One of the young bulls seemed agitated, running back and forth and snorting. Concerned, Rebecca approached the fence to get a better look. The animal was clearly panicking, and she noticed something was wrong with its hind leg. It looked like it had wire tangled around it. Without thinking twice, Rebecca grabbed her backpack and entered the pasture. It was dangerous, she knew, but the animal was suffering and could hurt itself even more. "Easy, boy," she murmured, approaching slowly. But the bull, already in panic, didn't recognize her peaceful intentions. When Rebecca was a few yards away, it charged toward her. Rebecca tried to jump aside but tripped on a rock and fell hard. She felt a sharp pain in her right ankle the moment the bull ran past her, fortunately without hitting her. She tried to get up, but the pain was intense. Her ankle was swelling rapidly. "Help!" she shouted, but knew she was far from the ranch headquarters. That's when she heard the galloping approaching. Daniel appeared mounted on his chestnut, jumping from the saddle before the horse even stopped completely. "Rebecca, what happened?" He knelt beside her, his face pale with concern. "The bull had wire on its leg. I tried to help." Rebecca tried to explain between gasping breaths. Daniel quickly looked at the animal, which was now grazing peacefully on the other side of the pasture, then examined Rebecca's ankle carefully. "It's badly sprained, might be broken," he said, frowning. "I need to get you to the hospital." "It's not that serious," Rebecca protested, trying to stand up again. "Stay still." Daniel's voice had an authority that didn't allow discussion. "I'm going to carry you." Before Rebecca could protest, he picked her up in his arms with an ease that surprised her. Being so close to him, feeling his strength and his scent, made her momentarily forget the pain. Daniel carefully placed her in his horse's saddle, mounting behind her to keep her safe during the ride to the headquarters. "Why did you go into the pasture alone?" he asked as they rode, his voice tense. The bull was suffering, and you could have died. The anger in his voice was evident. "Never, ever do that again." Rebecca turned to look at him, surprised by the intensity of his reaction. "Are you angry with me?" Daniel stared at her for a long moment. "I'm angry because you got hurt. I'm angry because it could have been much worse." There was something in his eyes that made Rebecca's heart race, even through the pain. Arriving at the headquarters, Daniel carried her to his pickup and sped off to the town hospital. Throughout the journey, he remained tense, driving with controlled urgency. At the hospital, the diagnosis was a severe sprain. There was no fracture, but Rebecca would need to rest for at least a week without putting weight on her foot. "And no walking without crutches," the doctor instructed. When they left the hospital, Rebecca expected Daniel to take her to her parents' house. Instead, he took the road back to the ranch. "Where are we going?" she asked. "To my house." "You're staying there until you recover," Daniel, you don't need to. Yes, I do. His voice didn't allow discussion. You got hurt on my property trying to help one of my animals. It's my responsibility to take care of you. Rebecca was about to protest again when she noticed something different in his tone. It wasn't just responsibility. There was genuine, almost possessive concern that made her quiet. Daniel's house was impressive, a large, elegant construction on top of the hill with a view of the entire ranch. Inside it was cozy despite its size, decorated with rustic but sophisticated furniture. "You'll stay in the guest room," Daniel said, carrying her up the stairs. "It has a nice view and is close to my room in case you need anything." The room was beautiful, with a large bed and windows overlooking the pastures. Daniel settled her carefully on the bed, stacking pillows so she could keep her foot elevated. "I'm going to get your things from your parents' house," he said. "What do you need?" "Daniel, you don't need to do this. I can stay at my parents' house." He sat on the edge of the bed, his eyes serious. "Rebecca, you almost got seriously hurt today because of one of my animals. Let me take care of you." There was something in his voice, a vulnerability she didn't expect, that made her agree. "All right, but just until my foot gets better." The smile Daniel gave her was like the sun coming out from the clouds. "Deal." As he left the room, Rebecca realized she'd just agreed to spend a week in the house of the man who increasingly occupied her thoughts in a disturbing way. Daniel returned late afternoon with a suitcase her mother had packed. Rebecca could tell by his expression that the conversation with her parents hadn't been easy. "They didn't approve of the idea much," Daniel said, entering the room with the suitcase. "They know you by reputation," Rebecca explained, feeling embarrassed. "And what reputation is that?" Rebecca hesitated. "That you're difficult, arrogant, that you don't like people." Daniel laughed, a genuine sound she didn't expect. "Well, at least 2 of those things are true." "Which ones?" "Find out for yourself." His eyes sparkled with amusement. "Now, are you hungry?" Mrs. Garcia prepared dinner. Mrs. Garcia was Daniel's housekeeper, a kind lady about 60 who treated Rebecca like family. She served dinner in Rebecca's room, insisting she needed to rest. "The boss was very worried," Garcia commented while arranging the tray. "Never seen him so upset." After Garcia left, Daniel appeared with his own tray. "Thought we could have dinner together," he said, pulling a chair close to the bed. It was strange, but at the same time natural to be there with him in that domestic intimacy. They talked about the ranch, about Rebecca's studies, about everything and nothing. "Did you always live here on the ranch?" Rebecca asked. "No. I came here a few years ago after changes in my life." His expression closed slightly. Rebecca noticed he didn't want to go into details and changed the subject. "And how is it managing such a large place?" "Challenging, but rewarding." Daniel became animated talking about work. "Each season brings its own problems and rewards." They talked until late, and Rebecca was surprised by how easy it was to talk with him. Underneath the rough facade, Daniel was intelligent, attentive, and surprisingly funny. "Do you have family in the region?" she asked at one point. Daniel hesitated. "No, my family is distant." There was something in the way he said it that made Rebecca realize it was more than geographic distance. But she didn't insist. "And you, besides your parents, anyone else around here?" "Some cousins, uncles, small family." Rebecca smiled. "My parents always wanted more children but couldn't. That's why they protect me so much." "Exactly." When she said she was going to study in Boston, my mom cried for a week. Daniel smiled, and Rebecca noticed how it transformed his face. "And do you regret leaving?" "Sometimes I miss the tranquility here. In Boston, everything is so rushed, competitive." She paused. but I like the challenges. I imagine so. Not everyone has the courage to enter a pasture alone with an angry bull. Rebecca laughed. That wasn't one of my smartest decisions, but it was brave. Daniel's eyes became serious. You're a brave woman, Rebecca. The way he said her name made something move in her chest. There was an intensity in the air that made her nervous and excited at the same time. How did you know I was in the pasture? Rebecca asked, changing the subject to break the tension. Thomas told me you'd arrived. When I got back and didn't find you at the corral, I went looking. His expression hardened. And when I saw you on the ground. Were you scared? Daniel stared at her intensely. I was terrified. The honesty in his voice made something move in Rebecca's chest. Why? For a long moment, he was silent. Because you've become important to me, Rebecca, more important than you should be. The air in the room seemed to get denser. Rebecca felt her heart race. Daniel. I know it's complicated, he continued. You're young. You have your life in Boston, your plans. I'm an older man with a complicated past. Are you tired? He said eventually, changing the subject when he realized he'd revealed too much. A little. Daniel stood up, collecting the trays. You need to rest to recover soon. Daniel, Rebecca called when he was already at the door. Thank you for everything. He looked at her with an expression she couldn't completely decipher, but that made her heart race. You don't need to thank me. Good night, Rebecca. After he left, Rebecca lay thinking about the conversation. There were layers to Daniel she was just beginning to discover, and each new discovery intrigued her more. The problem was, she was also falling in love, and that complicated everything. But there was something in his words, complicated past, that left her curious and a bit worried. What secrets was Daniel hiding? On the third day at Daniel's house, Rebecca could already move better with the crutches. Her ankle still hurt, but Daniel's constant company was helping pass the time. He'd cancelled all his appointments to stay near her, working from the home office when necessary. Rebecca felt guilty for disrupting his routine, but at the same time touched by the attention. You don't need to cancel your appointments because of me, she said during breakfast. Yes, I do. Daniel poured coffee for her. You're here because of me. It was my choice to enter that pasture. And it was an idiotic choice, he retorted, but there was affection in his voice. Rebecca laughed. Thanks for the support. Always at your service. The morning passed quietly with Daniel working in the office while Rebecca read in the living room. Around noon, he had to leave to resolve an urgent problem with a supplier. I'll be back in a few hours, he promised. Garcia is here. If you need anything, I'll be fine. Go ahead. You can go without worry. After Daniel left, Rebecca decided to explore the house a bit more. With the crutches, she managed to reach the library, which impressed her with the quantity and variety of books. She was leafing through a book about horse breeding when she heard raised voices coming from the courtyard. Curious, she hobbled to the window and saw Daniel talking aggressively with an older, well-dressed man with an authoritative posture. I told you I don't want you here. Daniel's voice was loaded with anger. Daniel, be reasonable, the other man responded with a condescending tone. You can't stop me from seeing how things are. Yes, I can. This is my property. And are my grandchildren also your property? Rebecca felt her heart stop. Grandchildren. Daniel had children. They're well cared for, Daniel said, but his voice had lost some firmness. In a boarding school, far from their father. That's not caring. That's abandonment. They're receiving the best education money can buy, and love, affection, a family. The older man took a step forward. Victoria wouldn't want to see her children raised by strangers. Hearing Victoria's name, Daniel stiffened visibly. Don't you dare speak my wife's name. She was my daughter before she was your wife, and because of you, she's dead." The silence that followed was cutting. Rebecca saw the older man step back as if he'd been slapped. "That's low even for you," he finally said. "It's the truth. If you hadn't insisted we go to that damn party, the fault wasn't mine, Daniel. You know that. I do. You spent years poisoning Victoria against me, making her doubt our marriage. I only wanted the best for my daughter. And look what happened." Daniel gestured violently. "She died, thinking she'd made the wrong choice." The older man shook his head sadly. "You're blinded by guilt. Victoria loved you. She never doubted that. Get off my property, now. And the children, when will you bring them home?" "When I decide it's time. They're 7 years old, Daniel." "They need their father. They're better off without me." "No, you're the one who's better off without them, because that way you don't have to face reality." Daniel advanced toward the man with clenched fists. "Leave before I do something I'll regret." The older man stared at him for a long moment, then sighed and headed to his car. "You can't run forever, Daniel. Eventually, you'll have to face the truth." Rebecca quickly moved away from the window when she saw Daniel returning to the house. Her heart was racing. Daniel had twin children, 7 years old, and kept them away from him in a boarding school. When he entered the library a few minutes later, she tried to disguise it, but Daniel knew her well enough to notice something was wrong. "You heard the conversation." It wasn't a question. Rebecca nodded, not knowing what to say. Daniel let himself fall into an armchair, running his hands through his hair. "That was my ex-father-in-law, Victoria's father. You have children, twins, Nathan and Lily." His voice was tired, defeated. "They're 7. Rebecca felt as if the world had turned upside down. "And they're in a boarding school. It's better this way." "Better for whom?" The question came out harsher than she intended. Daniel stared at her with cold eyes. "For everyone involved." "They're children, Daniel. How can it be better for them to be away from their father?" "Because I'm not a good father." His voice was rough. "Not after what happened." Rebecca stood up, leaning on her crutches. That's the most absurd thing I've ever heard. It's the truth. I killed their mother. How can I look at them without remembering that every day?" "You didn't kill anyone." "I did." Daniel stood up too, starting to pace. "If I'd been a better husband, if I hadn't fought with her that night." "Daniel, you can't blame yourself forever for an accident." "Yes, I can and I will." He stopped pacing and stared at her. "That's why it's better the children stay away from me. They deserve better." Rebecca felt tears of frustration in her eyes. They deserve their father. Their father is a broken man, Rebecca, a man who destroyed his own family. "That's not true." "It is," Daniel shouted, making her step back. "And that's why you should leave too, before I destroy you as well." The silence that followed was loaded with pain and misunderstanding. Rebecca saw the anguish in Daniel's eyes and understood his wounds were much deeper than she'd imagined. "I'm not going anywhere," she finally said, her voice firm. "And you're not going to destroy me, because I won't let you." Before Daniel could respond, she left the library, limping, leaving him alone with his demons. That night, neither appeared for dinner. Garcia served the meals in their respective rooms, worried about the attention hanging over the house. Rebecca barely touched her food, thinking about the children who didn't know their father and the tormented man who refused to forgive himself. That night, Daniel didn't appear for dinner. Garcia served Rebecca's meal in her room with a worried expression. "The boss has been in the office since afternoon," the housekeeper said. "Didn't even have lunch." Rebecca tried to focus on the food but couldn't stop thinking about the conversation she'd overheard. The image of 2 7-year-old children far from their father tormented her. Around 10 at night, she decided she couldn't stay quiet anymore. She went down limping to the office, where she found Daniel sitting behind the desk. a whiskey bottle half empty beside him. Rebecca. He looked up and she could see he'd been drinking more than he should. You shouldn't be walking, and you shouldn't be drinking alone. Daniel laughed without humor. Touché. Rebecca approached the desk, noticing the photographs scattered on it. They were images of two beautiful children, a boy and a girl with the same dark eyes as their father. They're beautiful, she said softly. They look like their mother. Daniel picked up one of the photos. Victoria was beautiful, much more than I deserved. Tell me about her. Daniel drank a sip of whiskey before responding. She was from a traditional wealthy family in New York, rich, educated, everything I wasn't when I met her. I was starting to make money but was still considered nouveau riche. How did you meet? At a business party. She was engaged to another man, a lawyer her father had chosen for her. His eyes got lost in memories. But there was something between us from the first moment. Rebecca felt a pang of jealousy but ignored it. And then, she broke off the engagement because of me. Her family never forgave me. Why? Daniel laughed bitterly. Especially her father. He always thought I wasn't good enough for Victoria. But you got married. Yes, and for a while we were happy. She got pregnant soon. We had the twins. His voice failed, but her father never stopped to feel tears in her eyes. Lily, that's a very serious thing, Rebecca said carefully. I know. That's why I'm asking. The girl looked at her with her large eyes. Or do you want to be our mommy, Aunt Rebecca? Rebecca looked at Lily, then at Daniel. In that moment, in the hospital room, all her doubts vanished. I do, she said, feeling like she was finally coming home, more than anything in the world. Lily smiled, the most beautiful smile Rebecca had ever seen. What about Nathan? He'll want it, the girl said. We have to ask him, Daniel said, also smiling. Can I call him? Lily asked. Rebecca laughed through the tears. I think we can wait until you're out of the hospital, don't you think? Okay, but you promise you won't change your mind. I promise. Daniel approached Rebecca, holding her free hand. Are you sure? He whispered. Absolutely, she responded. This is my family. You are my home. That night, while Lily slept in the hospital, Daniel and Rebecca talked about the future, about marriage, about Rebecca finishing her studies in the region, about building a life together. When the sun rose the next day, Rebecca knew she was exactly where she should be. She'd found not just the love of her life, but an entire family that completed her. Lily recovered quickly, and a week later, all four were gathered in the ranch living room for an important conversation. Nathan, Daniel began, we have a question for you. What question? How would you feel if Aunt Rebecca married me and became your real stepmother? Nathan looked from one to the other, then at Lily, who nodded encouragingly. Does that mean she'll live here forever? Forever, Rebecca confirmed. Nathan shouted with joy and threw himself into her arms. I always wanted a mom, and you're the best mom in the world. And so, in the middle of the ranch living room, with two children in her arms and the man she loved beside her, Rebecca knew she'd made the right decision. Sometimes the best life isn't the one we plan, but the one the heart chooses for us. 3 months passed in a whirlwind of happiness and adjustment. Rebecca had officially transferred to a veterinary program at the state university, just an hour's drive from the ranch. She could continue her studies while being present for Daniel and the children. The wedding was planned for spring, a simple ceremony on the ranch with close friends and family. Nathan and Lily were involved in every detail, from choosing flowers to tasting cake samples. The children had transformed completely. Nathan's energy was now channeled into helping around the ranch, learning everything he could from his father. Lily had blossomed into a confident, curious girl who no longer hid behind silence. She'd even started singing again, teaching Rebecca the lullabies her mother used to sing. One Saturday morning, Rebecca was in the clinic she'd set up on the ranch, examining a neighbor's sick calf, when Daniel appeared at the door with both children. "We have a surprise for you," Nathan announced, barely able to contain his excitement. "What kind of surprise?" Rebecca asked, washing her hands. "You have to close your eyes," Lily insisted. Rebecca played along, letting Daniel guide her outside. When she opened her eyes, she saw a beautiful sign at the entrance to the clinic, Mitchell Harrison Veterinary Services. "We're not married yet," she said, touched by the gesture. But we will be soon," Daniel said, wrapping his arms around her. "And I want everyone to know you're part of this family now." "Do you like it, Aunt Rebecca?" Lily asked. The children still called her Aunt Rebecca, though they'd started occasionally calling her Mom when emotions ran high. Rebecca had told them they could call her whatever felt right. "I love it. I love all of you." That afternoon, while the children played with the ranch dogs, Daniel and Rebecca sat on the porch watching them. "I never thought I could be this happy again," Daniel said quietly. "After Victoria died, I thought that part of my life was over." "She would want you to be happy," Rebecca said. "She'd want the children to be happy." "I know. I've been thinking about that a lot lately." He paused. "I went to visit her grave last week. First time in 3 years. Rebecca squeezed his hand, saying nothing, just listening. "I told her about you, about how you saved me, saved the kids. I think she would have liked you. I wish I could have known her. She was amazing, but she was also struggling with her father's expectations, with trying to please everyone. You're different. You know who you are and what you want." "I want this," Rebecca said firmly. "I want you and Nathan and Lily. I want this life we're building." The sound of a car interrupted them. A sleek black sedan pulled up to the house, and Victoria's father stepped out. Rebecca felt Daniel tense beside her. "Stay here," he said, standing up. But Rebecca stood too. "No, we face this together, Mr." Crawford approached slowly, looking older than when Rebecca had seen him months ago. His eyes fell on the children playing in the yard, and his expression softened. "Daniel," he said. "Richard." Daniel's voice was neutral. "What are you doing here?" "I came to apologize." The older man's voice was heavy with regret. "And to see my grandchildren, if you'll allow it." Daniel was silent for a long moment. Rebecca could see the war going on inside him. Finally, he spoke. "They're your grandchildren. You have a right to see them." "Thank you." Richard's eyes filled with tears. "I've been a stubborn, bitter old man. I blamed you because I couldn't accept that my daughter was gone. But keeping away from those children, that was wrong." "Yes, it was," Daniel said firmly. "But I was wrong too. I let guilt keep me from them. We've both made mistakes." Nathan and Lily had noticed the visitor and come running. "Who's that?" Nathan asked. Daniel knelt down to their level. "This is your grandfather, your mommy's daddy. He'd like to get to know you both, if that's okay." The children looked at their grandfather with curiosity, but no fear. Lily stepped forward first. "Do you have pictures of our mommy?" she asked. "When she was little like us." Richard smiled through his tears. "I have hundreds. Would you like to see them?" "Yes, please." Over the next few hours, they all sat in the living room while Richard showed photos and told stories about Victoria's childhood. Rebecca watched as Daniel gradually relaxed, even laughing at some of the stories. The children were entranced, learning about the mother they barely remembered. "She was brave," Richard said, showing a photo of young Victoria on a horse. "Fearless, really. When she was 8, She tried to ride the biggest horse on our ranch, got thrown off and broke her arm, but she got right back on after it healed. Just like Nathan, Lily said. He's always doing brave stuff. And you're like her too, Richard told Lily. Victoria was quiet, watched everything before she acted. Smart as a whip. When Richard prepared to leave, he pulled Daniel aside. I was wrong about you, he said. You loved my daughter. What happened wasn't your fault. It was an accident, a terrible accident. I should have said that years ago instead of blaming you. I blamed myself enough for both of us, Daniel admitted. Time to stop, son. Look at what you have here. Richard gestured to Rebecca and the children. Oh, Victoria would be happy seeing you happy again. She'd want the children to have a mother who loves them. Rebecca's been a blessing. I can see that. Treat her well. I will. After Richard left, Daniel found Rebecca in the kitchen helping Garcia prepare dinner. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. Thank you, he whispered. For what? For giving me the courage to let go of the past. For showing me I could be happy again. Rebecca turned in his arms. You did that yourself. I just believed in you. We make a good team. The best. The wedding day arrived on a perfect spring morning. The ranch had been transformed into a wonderland of flowers and white ribbons. Rebecca wore a simple ivory dress, her hair loose with wildflowers woven through it. Nathan and Lily, dressed in matching outfits, served as ring bearer and flower girl. As Rebecca walked down the makeshift aisle on her father's arm, she saw Daniel waiting for her, tears already streaming down his face. Nathan stood beside him in a miniature version of his father's suit, and Lily scattered rose petals with serious concentration. Dearly beloved, the minister began, but Rebecca barely heard the words. She was lost in Daniel's eyes, seeing her entire future reflected there. When it came time for the vows, Daniel's voice was steady and strong. Rebecca, you came into my life when I'd given up on happiness. You showed me that it's never too late to start over. Never too late to be the person you're meant to be. You've given me back my children and given them a mother who loves them unconditionally. I promise to love you, honor you, and choose you every single day for the rest of my life. Rebecca's turn came, and she spoke through happy tears. Daniel, when I got lost and stumbled onto your ranch, I thought I was just looking for directions, but I was really looking for home, and I found it in you and Nathan and Lily. You've taught me that the best plans are sometimes the ones we never make, and the greatest love stories start when we're brave enough to take a chance. I promise to stand by you, to be a mother to your children, and to build a life with you that's full of love and laughter. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Daniel kissed Rebecca as Nathan cheered and Lily clapped. The reception was a joyful celebration. Ranch hands mixed with Rebecca's college friends and Daniel's business associates. Even Richard was there, playing with his grandchildren and looking more at peace than he had in years. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Daniel and Rebecca stood watching their guests dance. Nathan was teaching Garcia's grandson how to do a complicated handshake, while Lily showed a group of children the ranch's new kittens. Happy? Daniel asked. Happier than I ever imagined possible, Rebecca replied. You know what the best part is. What? This is just the beginning. 5 years later, Rebecca sat on the same porch, watching a very different scene. Nathan, now 12, was teaching his little brother James how to throw a baseball. Lily, 11, sat in the grass with their 3-year-old sister Sophie, making daisy chains. Rebecca's hand rested on her pregnant belly, feeling the flutter of their 4th child. Daniel came out with 2 glasses of lemonade, sitting beside her with a satisfied sigh. Quite a crew we've got, he said. Quite a life we've built, Rebecca corrected. The veterinary practice had grown beyond her wildest dreams. She now employed 2 other vets and served ranches for miles around. Daniel had expanded the ranch too, but he'd learned to balance work and family, never missing a school play or baseball game. Nathan had just been accepted to a prestigious agricultural program, planning to return to run the ranch someday. Lily had discovered a love of music and filled the house with piano melodies every evening. "Do you ever think about that day you got lost?" Daniel asked. "All the time," Rebecca admitted. "The best wrong turn I ever took." "Not a wrong turn," Daniel said, kissing her temple. "Just a different path to where you were always meant to be." As the children's laughter filled the air and the sun set over the ranch, Rebecca reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She'd set out to be a veterinarian, to have a career, to make her mark on the world. She'd done all that, but she'd also found something more precious: a family, a home, a love that had healed both her and Daniel. Sometimes the best destinations are the ones we never planned to reach. Sometimes getting lost is the only way to find what we were looking for all along, and sometimes stumbling onto the wrong property leads us to exactly the right place. As night fell over the ranch, Daniel gathered the children for their bedtime routine. Rebecca watched from the doorway as he read stories, tucked them in, and sang the lullabies that Victoria had once sung. Lily had taught him to remember them, and now they were part of the fabric of their family. "Daddy?" Sophie asked sleepily. "Tell us again how you met Mommy." Daniel glanced at Rebecca with a smile. "Well, Princess, Mommy was lost, and she wandered onto our ranch looking for directions." "And you gave her directions?" Nathan asked, even though he'd heard the story 100 times. "I did, but she kept coming back." "Because of the horses," Lily added. "Because of all of us," Rebecca said, entering the room. "I came back because I'd found something I didn't even know I was looking for." "What was that?" Sophie asked. "A family, love, home." Rebecca kissed each child goodnight. "All of you." Later, alone in their bedroom, Daniel pulled Rebecca close. "Any regrets?" he asked. "About leaving Boston, changing your plans?" "Not a single one," she said honestly. "Oh, this life, this family, you, it's everything I never knew I wanted. I love you, Rebecca Harrison. I love you too." As they fell asleep in each other's arms, Rebecca thought about the girl she'd been 5 years ago, so certain of her path, so focused on her carefully laid plans. That girl would never have believed this was where she'd end up. But that girl hadn't known what Rebecca knew now, that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with a wrong turn, that the deepest love grows in unexpected soil, and that home isn't a place you find on a map. It's a feeling you discover in the hearts of the people who love you. The ranch that had seemed so foreign that first day was now as familiar as her own heartbeat. The man who'd seemed so intimidating had become her partner, her love, her home, and the children who'd been strangers were now hers in every way that mattered. She'd come to the ranch looking for directions to town. Instead, she'd found directions to the rest of her life, and what a beautiful life it was. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel and share it with someone who believes in second chances and unexpected love. Leave a comment telling us what you loved most about Rebecca and Daniel's journey. Your support means everything and helps us bring more stories like this to you. Until next time, remember that sometimes getting lost is the first step to finding where you truly belong.